I don't see any reason whatsoever that we cannot continue a little bit more with what we were discussing last time, having to do with the fact that men must take the secondary world seriously or it would implode. It would collapse. It would have a bad case of nerves if they still have those in the South, and something terrible would happen. And some of what the examples we were using, I assume, were clear enough, but it can be even more direct if you can try and think from a very plain think position, a very non-critical position, and consider whatever. I'm just going to hit some major salient bumps in the skull of the secondary world, but take very modern, civilized, important secondary activities such as religious rituals, nationalistic ceremonies of all natures, psychological counseling, analysis, treatment, political parties and all their activities, political nominating activities. I'll hit in a few minutes with something else. Academic traditions, all sorts of lovers' discussions, quarrels. And how about the news? Since this is the age of information, so I read. You wouldn't believe it. I thought I've still been waiting around for the age of reason I kept reading about. Turns out they had it 300 or 400 years ago, and nobody even invited me, or they didn't tell me. But at any rate, the news. Not the actual activities going on in life, but the news, the reporting of news and all the media. Now inside, let's take examples. And remember, as I know you would, but I'm going to say it anyway, no critical implications whatsoever. And I know if you're still dealing with the cards out of your old intellectual deck, I know it's hard, but even theoretically, you can tell yourself, yes, I can be objective, because the world is full of people who say, yes, I can be objective, just thank God I'm not surrounded by them. So at least pretend. Imagine what it would be like to be absolutely, as the dictionary would say, objective. No personal self-reference in what we're considering. But now think about such things as religious rituals, which are still very important. Think about it. If you could fly down from another planet, another dimension, which would be the same thing as having a new kind of intelligence here, and in a sense look anew upon the, don't take splinter groups, the major, important, civilized religious rituals. Catholic Mass, as good as any. If you did not, if man was not forced, forget how this happened for the time being, let's just say the activity is going on. If man was not driven, if he was not forced to take that seriously, what would you make of it? All forms of nationalistic ceremonies. Am I nationalistic? I'm just trying to pick up everything right now that would not, to normal intelligence or old intelligence, fall into the category of religion. That you see people out, parades going on. You see the president, the prime minister, the king of some country, and all the people standing up. His army is there, and everybody with all the braid and all the spaghetti up here, music playing, people saluting, making all sorts of things, and standing and crying. If you saw that, and you were not forced to take it seriously, what would you make of it? What if you could observe people engaged? I was using the professional, institutional level of psychological counseling. It's not, since we're not being critical here anyway, it's not an attack on psychology or psychiatry. It could be just people talking about advice to each other, but let's take it in the institutionalized form that people went to school to learn to do this. And you could pop in, unseen, and you saw somebody consulting a psychiatrist or a psychologist. whatever is the cutting edge of psychological therapy today, and you popped in and you saw that, and you were not forced to take it seriously, what would you make of it? And the person talking about all the things that their mother did before they were born, in fact, or things that happened, just you know by now, what would you make of that? The news, that you're seeing people, and you found out, or you immediately spotted, that they were paid, this is their job, and they're sitting there, or else they're typing, if it was a hard print media for a newspaper, or you turn on television, which is the most common now, the most commonly available and used by all reports, and you see people all dressed up, had plastic surgery, getting large amounts of money, got important, up-to-date clothes on, and they're delivering the news. And they're not doing anything, they're sitting there, and they're paid these outrageous sums of money to tell you what happened, and not just tell you, but they're now stars, as you all know, and they're very serious. Besides that little banner they do when they're fixing to go to teasers and commercials, but the rest of it is serious. What would you make of that? That you see that this is now, especially in the age of information. Somebody tell me, was anybody around when the age of reason came? Well, because I shouldn't make comments like that, because I'll be damned, I missed the Renaissance. So shows how alert I was. What would you make of somebody delivering news? Now try and clear your mind, try and clear the old decks, and think about that if you came down, and as always we've got to stretch reality that, in other words, you're almost seeing something for the first time, but by the same token you just have to have enough background to understand what was going on, without a great deal of elaboration from the local parties. But you understood that there is somebody sitting in a local spot, in a studio in New York, in Cincinnati, and they are looking dead in the camera, they're getting paid for this, they've got all worked up, they practice, and they're telling you things that somebody told them. They pulled off a wire service, or somebody called and said, this happened on the other side of the world, and they mention it, and then they make some little less and less subtle, but a kind of editorial comment about this does not augur well for the already rising price of fuel in this country. And they look like, huh? You got that? And it's like as though they were doing something. What would you make of that if you found out that all they did was show up, make sure that their facelift hadn't shifted or anything, they get their hair done, and somebody writes this, and they sit there and they're paid to read it. Not making fun of them, because that's just a handful of people in this country. Whereas there are millions and millions of people who do not get dressed up or sitting there in their underwear and turn it on, and they take it seriously. In other words, as always, you can't laugh at, even if you were being cynical, you'd be dumbly cynical if you were laughing at the activities of priests and rabbis and ministers without realizing that they, it's not a solo dance. Solo dances they do not survive. You don't ever hear of solo dances. People that try to dance solo are put away. So you can't laugh at a minister or a priest. You can't laugh, even if you were, I'm just taking a sidetrack, even if you were falling back into the clutches of your old intelligence and being a smart ass. You're a dumb smart ass not to realize, well, hey, I can't just laugh at them. Even if you exempt yourself, which of course all smart asses do, or you can't be a smart ass. You can't just laugh at the priest, or you can't just laugh at some news anchor person. You got to understand they're not doing a solo dance. If they were, they'd be off alone or be put away. Nobody notices a solo dance. So it's not just this one priest. It's not just Mr. or Miss so-and-so now reading the news on CBS Evening News. It's them and whatever it is, 9.5 million people or 20 million people watching them, taking it seriously. So don't even get distracted on that basis. If man was not forced to take this seriously, what would all of this be? And I suggest, if you can see it in a certain non-self-referring way, it would be little more than very elaborate jokes. Try and take away your cynicism and sarcasm, because I know, it's easy enough for it to spring up, and all I got to do is encourage it a little, which is not what I'm attempting to do, of course. But if you look and think about how serious, let's go back, religion's always a prime example because it actually crosses nationalistic and racial and sexual and all kinds of lines. It still does. But if you just took the Catholic Church, a mass, if you just walked in and you had no knowledge of it, and we're still playing with reality, enough that you knew that this is one of the important aspects. Civilized, we're up to date, they inform you, you are circa present. You're right up to date. Here it is, the finest example architecturally. The man has 3 degrees, the man running the service. It is a quite wealthy diocese here. The people are educated, and you walked in or flew over, and you watched this. If anybody thinks I pick on the Catholic Church, go see a Greek Orthodox. At any rate, and you looked at that. If you were not forced to take that serious, what would you make of that? If we can stretch reality and that you still had some of the kind of sensibilities of an earth-delivered, an earth-bred human, but in some way I took away your knowledge of that specifically. Understand, we're having to play with this. If you looked at it, what would be your first impression? Probably your only impression. You'd think, well, what's the joke? I mean, this is some kind of big elaborate, is this some kind of holiday that you have here that I never heard of? I know this goes on constantly, 2 or 3 times a day. What would you make of it? This is some kind of just when I say elaborate, it's got to be costly. They got, just in this one area, you can see a couple of dozen people that seem to be involved in it. You look around and realize they didn't build this thing out of green stamps. And here it is, these grown people, and they've already told you that the degree of education of the people sitting out there, the people dancing backwards, and the ones up front dancing forward, all of them have degrees, and there they are, dressed as they're wont to dress in the Catholic Church, and do as they're wont to do, whatever it is that. And you looked at that, if you were not forced to take it seriously, whether you're a Catholic or not, we're still assuming if you were just an ordinary, civilized, secondary world person in the city, even if you weren't a Catholic. Nowadays, to be truly civilized, you would not laugh at it. If you were Jewish or Protestant, you've seen enough of TV, or we're assuming that you're middle of the bell curve, you are sophisticated enough. If you were taken to the Catholic Church for the first time, you've never seen them wave the things and light candles and mumble in whatever language they're up to now. We'll assume that you're civilized enough that you wouldn't laugh. I mean, you don't understand it, but you understand the seriousness of it. But what if you were not forced to take that seriously? What could you make of it other than, come on, let me in on this. What's the joke? What can you, I'm saying a joke. What else are we going to call it? A circus. But it's a joke. Unless you're forced to take it seriously. People ring the news. And it's not just the news, but they're talking about what? Serious stuff to begin with. Stock market is down, prices are up. The president's sick. A tyrant on the other side of the world is rattling swords, if not gas canisters. And this is serious. And again, we're assuming that you are right at the city level, that you're right there in the upper communities of civilized, sophisticated, information age-oriented men and women, and you're taking all this very seriously. Of course, one thing I was trying to get you to sort of hint at last time, I just sort of threw in. Think how serious the news is. Stuff going on now. What if, still what you are now, that you went out and removed yourself into a hermit-like position, that you just kind of shut down all the outside world for a couple of weeks? How would you know how serious things were? For a few days you'd worry, why did I do this? Because I bet by now Hussein has gone mad and he's attacked us. God knows I shouldn't have done this. It's like the world is going to get too serious unless I'm there to in some way keep up. For those of you that never read it, some book, a guy who chartered a boat and went out and was trying to get away. He was going away for a couple of weeks out in the South Pacific or somewhere, he and his wife. And after a few days, he said he was going nuts. Thinking, this is not a guy that he took no radio, no nothing. And he said that he was just starving for the news, and he started pulling around the boat, and he pulled up some cushions, and there was a newspaper. And he poured himself a Bloody Mary and went there and stood in the rear, and he thought, at least I got one paper. It's a couple of days old because they'd been out a couple of days from Rio or where they... And so he read it and read it all the way through, and commented to his wife how much better he felt. And a little later, she picked up the paper and asked him, did he realize that the paper was 3 years old? Do you understand that's not a joke? That if you had the right section, it wouldn't have to be that chancy, that you could sit there and read a paper and not know. Literally, whether that is feasible in each and every case that you could speculate upon is not the point. It is the point that the news is taken seriously, and if you ask people, why do you take it seriously, what would be their response? Ask yourself. Other than looking at me like, you're dumber than a 3-year-old newspaper. You take the news seriously because it's serious. Then how serious is it if you didn't know about the news? Of course, ordinary intelligence can say, well, you're doubly dumb because that's some kind of Zen mind game you're saying. I bet you're trying to say that if you went out in the woods and lived for a while, then all these great problems, like right now in this circa 1990, the last of the year, we got a little country in the Middle East that is making noises like war and frightening people. And you could say, well, you're saying that if you went off for a few months or a few weeks and didn't know anything, the problem might go away. But you're nuts. You might go out there in the woods and it started, and they might be fighting on the outskirts down in Manhattan or Los Angeles or Atlanta, and there you are 50 miles away, cut off, and you don't know about it. It could be to your disadvantage not to have kept up. Right. In other words, they could ask a rhetorical question of us, like, are you saying that if you didn't keep up, the news wouldn't be so bad? See, that's the best kind of questions. That's the best kind of questions ordinary intelligence could come up with for this sort of thing. Is why I speak for it many times. And I do it in an aggressive manner. I do it better than it could normally. But that's the only thing I could make of it, which, of course, is not the point. You knew I was going to say, of course, didn't you? To make you feel good, like everybody go, oh, yeah. Think about all forms of nationalism. All of this, of course, is genetic, and it's not anybody's fault. It's not the fault of Irish, French, Africans, Italians, Catholics, Jews. This is part of life. This is part of the necessary boundaries that seem to separate I from not I, that seem to create individuality, that is the absolute energetic chemical backbone of the secondary world. And the primary world, but the secondary world is the only place it's ever discussed. But it seems to be religious boundaries, nationalistic boundaries. But think of all the great sites outside of churches. The coronation of a new Queen of England, the swearing in of a new President of the United States. And that is, they bump the good cartoons if it's on Saturday morning, and they'll start hours before the swearing in, hours, with all these serious news commentators. And they show people marching up and down Pennsylvania Avenue and bands coming down. Serious. But if you looked at that and thought, what in God's name is going on here? They said they have elected a new leader and they're going to swear him in. Would you think that was an improvement if you just left for the first time seeing a Catholic Mass? Would you think, well, at least things are getting better? I don't know. Or then if you got away from the larger institutional settings and you popped in to someone under the treatment of one of America's or Belgium's finest psychiatrists. If not that, you popped in on the Oprah Winfrey show. Same thing. Phil Donahue. And you listen to them talk, and it's people going, I mean, taking it seriously. I don't care if they're getting a few laughs. They're taking it seriously because their sponsors, if we're going back to the TV show, paying $500,000 a minute. That's serious. Forget that they may be making a few jokes there, and every now and then Donahue gets off a bon mot, a clever little pithy observation. It's serious. And in the psychiatrist's office. I don't know. I started to say surely a psychiatrist sometimes jokes, but I could be wrong about that. The point is, it is deadly serious. Somebody's there paying $200 an hour. That's serious. And the guy realizes, I shouldn't say it, but is that great Pope Mel Brooks. Not the one that says it's the most fun you can have with him. But it's the other great Pope, Mel, said, if we don't watch it, we're going to be out of our phony baloney jobs. A psychiatrist is the same as a priest. Psychiatrists and priests do not sit around and laugh about their jobs. They can't. Getting into a little more, the further it gets from primary needs of life, the more seriously things must be taken. In case, if any of you have ever thought, if any of you ever wondered that, say after some episode like this, if it ever struck you, I wonder if priests leave after they get through with all this and go in the back and they all have a drink and go ha 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 and laugh at the crowd. You understand? If you don't understand, I'm doing it rhetorically, they can't. Because the further away it's removed, the more serious it's got to be taken. Now, from an outside observation, you could take just the opposite. You could say, well, these guys have got to be laughing up their collective sleeves. Or a psychiatrist. You could think that he gets through and he says, well, all right, I'll see you the same time 3 days from now, Mrs. Jones. And she goes out there and writes a check, another check for $200. And she leaves after she's sitting there for 50 minutes, talked, looked at her nails, whined, and he just sat there and went, That you could think, well, she walks out, and he goes, boy, I wish Mel Brooks was here with me because have I got a job? These people, what the hell? I can't believe it. It's like Christmas every day. No. I mean, in case you ever think they can do that, they could not. And if they started doing it individually, whoever was doing that is coming unwound. Their turban's about to fall off. Because, but do you understand? But compare, if we were talking about somebody that was closer to, if we're talking about a carpenter, if we're talking about a gardener, a farmer, if we're talking about somebody that was down more at the level, say a guy that actually is still farming, and that's the way he is feeding himself, and that people come up there, let's make it real direct, and people come up and they buy what he buys, what he is producing. He grows it right in the ground, and they need it to live. You understand you got a different situation? Well, I just didn't want you to get it hung in some of the laughter that's so easy. He could, comparably speaking, this farmer, he could laugh at the people when they left. Like, why in the world do people come out here and pay me X amount of dollars for a bushel of okra? It cost me 2 cents, and I'm to the point now, it's almost nothing to me. And he could laugh at them. Or he could laugh at their attitude about, boy, it must be great to be here and still be a person of the soil and get your hands dirty and be out in the elements and be closer to nature. And boy, I'm stuck in that old damn job downtown being a brain sturgeon. And he could go, yes, and they left. And he can turn to himself or somebody else and go, those people in the city are nuts. I like their money, but they're nuts. Now he could do that. He could do that, comparably speaking, to somebody who is further and further removed from primary needs of life. Because the further you are from the primary needs of life, primary demands, the more seriously that crap has got to be taken. The activities. I just said crap. And so the further you are removed, such as a minister, a priest, a psychiatrist, there is no room, not if you're going to keep your profession, your reputation, and, as they are pleased to call it in the city, your sanity. You do not kid around about that. Which was also part of the laughs that you people did when I said that psychiatrists don't make jokes, but I could be wrong. Some of you are already laughing. It was running off into little eddies and your own little poos, and you didn't know why. But you do understand. And you'd never thought about it. It's not the nature. There's no need for it. It's not because of stupidity, but there is absolutely no need for humans to think about this at this particular time. But you knew as soon as I said it that a psychiatrist, an ordinary, everyday psychiatrist, forget any opinion you have of the profession of psychiatry, that or a minister, a priest, forget your idea, any mechanical idea you have toward religion or Catholicism. But as soon as I said it, you understood. A priest, a psychiatrist, a military, well, I shouldn't confuse you. Let's leave it at those two for a second. They cannot laugh. They cannot treat what they do, which is, you understand, is much further removed from primary concerns than the farmer. They cannot treat what they do, the whole dance, the people they're involved with, what success they have, what failures they have, what they know, what they fake, what they say they know and they don't, they still have to treat it all very seriously. They cannot laugh. And they don't have to teach them that in school. They don't ever say, all right, now that you're about to graduate and be a psychiatrist or a priest, remember this, don't ever laugh at the parishioners or your patient. They don't have to tell them that. Nobody has to tell them. People are already wired up to know everything that life needs you to know. And they're wired up to know that the further your activities are removed from primary needs, the more seriously you got to take it. And assuming that you're into something that is needed in life, sometimes known as a viable activity. Not around here, but I understand. Some places they call it. Then you also understand that your audience, that is, whoever's going to be dancing with your activities, your patients, your parishioners, they too are going to take it seriously. A priest, he doesn't ever think, the first time or one day that he's putting on, I don't know whether they have fashion, but I assume every now and then the Pope or Rome, somebody says, well, throw in a little purple or, put in some French cuffs on this. But a priest never gets up, has coffee and get ready to go out there and hold his first Mass and put on that thing, look in the mirror and go, Jesus Christ, I look like a Walt Disney character that's been thrown in a Cuisinart. What am I doing? Or he never walks past the mirror and goes, or he never wonders. He never has any fear, well, I'm going to walk out. Just one day, life is going to get, a little more sane, and one day I'm going to walk out in this beautiful, beautiful, neo-Gothic cathedral, and I'm going to have all my clothes and all this clean and the hat and everything straight and all those shoes and the things he holds. And I'm going to walk out and suddenly, I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be like my worst nightmare. And suddenly all these other sane, reasonable people are going to look up and it's going to strike them. What in the hell are we doing? And they're going to look at me and they're going to pick on me because look at me. I mean, if I sat and tried to look dumb, if I tried to look silly, stupid, if I just went out to a costume place or I designed my own and had somebody here to see me, how could I look more ridiculous than this? You do understand? A priest, that part of life's body, they never have any fear. Or a psychiatrist, speaking at a convention or come out to his patient in his $800 suit. And you know that you're paying $200 an hour. And it's the first time you've been to a psychiatrist. He knows it's the first time. His secretary has already run interference before you made an appointment. And she's already told you that this new patient has been recommended by the family physician, an old friend, and they don't know anything about psychiatry. All they know is that they got the address and they'll be here Tuesday at 2 o'clock, and it's $200 an hour. And the psychiatrist, no psychiatrist, he ever thinks, well, I'm about to walk out in the room. She'll be here any minute, my new patient. And they're going to walk in, but if it was me, I'm going to walk in, and for $200 an hour, I'm going to assume there's going to be this great, astounding technology here. There's going to be equipment. I'm going to be doing all kinds of tests. It'd probably be hurtful for $200. Well, $200 an hour, you assume you're going to get hurt for that much money. But if this new patient walks in, they walk in and they sit down and I walk out, I'm all cleaned up, got manicured nails, a good hairdo, an $800 suit, and I've got a pen and this little pad. And I'm going to walk out, and I'm going to introduce myself. We're going to speak, and I'm going to maybe, so you might want to know something about it. I graduated. My undergraduate work was at Johns Hopkins, and then I received my PhD in psychiatry from Harvard. And you show all that, and then you said, please sit down or lay down if you'd like to. The person goes, I don't want to lay down. I came here to be treated. Are you going to operate? Well, no, or sit down. And then they look around, and they're going to say, well, what do we do? And I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to take my expensive pen, I'm going to unscrew it, and I'm going to pick up my pad and say, proceed. And it's suddenly going to strike them. You see the similarity? I was going to say a priest, this imaginary idea, a priest just has a great fear. I'm going to walk out someday, and suddenly everybody's going to come to their senses. And they're all going to look at me and think, Jesus, holy Christ, what are we doing? This new patient is going to come in, and it's finally going to strike them. They're going to look around. Although my office is furnished very nicely, they're going to look around. There's no medical equipment. Not even some kind of damn used x-ray machine from, Salvation Army. There's nothing. There's a chair, my desk, my haircut, my suit, a pen, and I'm going to say, please proceed. And it's going to strike them. I'm paying $200 an hour for this clown to sit down there, shoot his cuffs, show me his nails, point to Harvard, and he's going to say, please proceed. And they're either going to laugh or get mad, but the worst possibility in the city, all of you should know, is not mad. Because they get mad, you can make notes and say, oh, that's good aggression. Any psychiatrist knows to do that, or at least to hit you first before you hit him. But the one that they can't stand is the same thing that would be frightening the priest. Is this new patient go, wait a minute, I'm going to pay you $200 an hour, you got no equipment, you're not going to do any kind of test, and the treatment is that what you call it? Yes, we call it analysis, treatment. And the treatment is you pull out your pen, I see it's very expensive, I saw Mont Blanc, and, you flash it. I saw that. So you're going to pull out, and then you look at me and you do this great hand gesture with your fancy nails, and you're going to say, proceed. And this is going to be it. And the psychiatrist goes, well, more or less. Not that they're going to get mad. The real fear would be that they're going to go, they're going to think, God almighty, and I thought fairy tales were fairy tales. You fell into the ditch. There was not, a honey pot. You have fallen into a gold mine. This is ridiculous. That is the fear. Or that would be the fear, took enough time to do that if somebody in the world of academia and such professions as psychiatry, a man does not come out and he's speaking at a convention, he's speaking at a university, he's speaking at a club that invited him, they're interested in such matters, psychiatry, economics, weather forecasting, psychology, that the man comes out and he may say, he may even have warned them, they may advertise, Dr. So-and-so or Professor so-and-so will be tonight commenting on his latest paper that he has yet to have published because of the great controversy and the extreme ideas, theories that he is proposing. He will come out, and he is prepared for anything. He'll be prepared for harsh, aggressive questioning. Even somebody go, boo, rubbish. But there's one thing that he is not prepared for, and that he wouldn't show up. He's going to come out and start giving this new theory, and that people are going to treat him like he is a buffoon. Not aggressively. I mean, they're going to laugh at him in the same way that if the parishioners came to their senses and looked up and thought, have you ever seen anybody dressed like that? I mean, what kind of bet did you lose? If they started treating him not the way he's dressed now, but his intellectual dress, his ideas, if they started treating him like that, nobody can survive that. The secondary world, that particular person, that doctor, that professor, would collapse. Now you understand, you begin to see more, that if institutionally, religion, the professions, if they were not treated seriously, not that they wouldn't be just a matter of an individual priest or psychiatrist or lecturer collapsing, institutions would begin to collapse. The world, the secondary world, would begin to collapse. There was a notation that some of you heard that kind of flew by about how local matters always seem serious. Compare that with what we've mentioned before in making these kind of polarized, binary, necessary at times, mappings in a relative way between universal and local. Local matters, the way it first flew by you here, those of you that weren't out picking your teeth with tumbleweed and wondering if there was another spread even down the road. The way it was first rode by, it said, local matters seem serious. It could have even said some local matters seem serious. A genteel way of putting it. A matter of meiosis. Is that the only synonym in the world for understatement? After all these years of saying understatement, I knew there was one. If it's local, it will seem serious. It's not psychological. It has nothing to do with the individual. If it is local, that is, the secondary world, it will seem serious. If there is any even passing relative exception to this, it would be things that would be a shot in the dark. the ship in the night, the little dance of, hey stranger, do you know what time it is? Yes, 2 o'clock, thanks. If it goes past that, if it is something that registers on your energy meter, if Con Ed, if the great forces could look down and whatever's going on, whatever energy exchange is going on between you and some other person or institution, if it's running the meter, then it's more than, hey stranger, do you know what time it is? If it's doing that, then it is a local matter and it seems serious. Humor seems serious. There is, besides just putting it to you that way, there is, as always, we will not try to go into it, a mathematical, a spatial law that would really state that the further you get away from, the further you move away from the primary parts, the primary past, let us say, into the secondary present, the more seriously must be taken the activities, the interest, and the needs. There is no way around that. It is not an anomaly of some sort. It is not something that can be figured out. It is not something that can be avoided. The further individually, and of course your ordinary individually is because you're moving with the herd, as if you had a choice. But the further you are removed from the primary past, which is everyone's past, no matter what race, religion, nationality, the primary past is the past. The primary past is the lifeblood of man. But the further you are removed from that into present, and even future looking, of course, but into the present secondary world and all of its activities and interests and dreams, then the more seriously must everyone take it. It is as much a law as gravity and inertia and opposite reactions and etc. It is an absolute inescapable law. I mentioned in passing the things that had to be taken seriously, some of the great examples, and I mentioned political parties and activities. Can anybody, would you care to tie this into something else that we ran down the road earlier? It's kicking up a lot of dust. The rig could have been out of control, and we still may be waiting for Hoot Gibson to ride up, to chase it down, and to save the school marm. But while we're waiting, this, of course, is not related to any real politics, but what would seem to be the ordinary world of political affairs is a great crude shadow cast operational of the energy behind it. The notion that was run by was that those that want power should take power. I'm sure that we are all, one and all, just as pleased as punch to live where we live in this great place that probably has governmental interference to a minimum. One of the least interfering governments in the world. Everybody, salute the flag. All right. You got that? Now listen. Because this really has nothing to do with politics except for the fact that the crude, easily described shadows of a greater reality are present continually right here in life, so we can apparently point out there and talk about it. And it has to do with those that want power should take power. You remember that was a little tale that supposedly some speaker out in the park said that. But now think about it. Now, in the primary past, and still with animals and plants in the 3D world, those that are wired up to want power take power. And those, and of course then they later give it up when somebody wants it worse than they do, and they take it from them. But besides those people, dancing with them. I mean, you can't be in power unless there's a group of people that want to be powered. You can't be a leader without a group of people who want to be led, etc. You can't be the top wolf if you don't have a pack. You can say you're a top wolf, but you are a shot in the dark. You are a phenomenon. You are a solo dance that no one notices. You could be the baddest, if there's some way to objectively decide, wolf in the forest, and if you don't have a pack, you might as well forget it, Charlie. You'll never win an award. You'll never be nominated. You won't even be invited to the ceremonies. You are, in fact, operationally a hermit. You're cut off. It is a solo dance. But we're back referring to those that strike because of the conservation of energy, the aspects that strike the human interest. That is, the kings, the power brokers and wielders of the world and history, not the people. They're just kind of the extras in the movie. Of course, they're not extras because if you didn't have them, you would not have the king, and if you didn't have the extras, you wouldn't have the movie. But listen to me. In the primary past, those who wanted power took power. It's still going on today, less and less. And you are now involved with, let us take where we live, as much as we all are thankful to be here, and in other parts of the world more and more beginning to look like us politically, in areas known as democratic societies wherein people do not take power, they are selected, they are elected. If you can see in a certain way that now you're going to have to get way beyond politics and any kind of nationalistic noises your own old nervous system is making, there is something in a quite primary way that is extremely unseemly about men soliciting power. And every now and then, it's not important, but I see it pop up throughout history and even today, just for a second. It's almost like a commentator or writer somewhere, almost like he turns to a new area of his own intelligence and says, "Hey, Bub, do you know what time it is?" And it says 2:30, and he goes, "Thanks." And he gets over it. But in a way that is still in a breathing, blood-circulating manner that is still extant in people. They don't realize it, but you people should be able to hear me. There is something that strikes, even today, as being, I think I'll stick with unseemly. For people who want power, that they have to come out and say, "Hi, my name's so-and-so, and here's pictures of my family, and I'm a graduate of such and such clue, and I'm a Baptist here, and I've been in the community 10 years. Would you vote for me? And I'll be real good, I'll look after you, and I'm in favor of all the things you're in favor of." There is something still unseemly about that. I think I am again dealing in, and I must say it again, now that we've already called it, meiosis. To call it unseemly. And then once they get in power, once a man's elected president or prime minister, well, let's say a president when it seems to be kind of more direct voting, then he can't really exercise power because now, in the age of information, more and more, they're doing, as far as I know in our country, in the White House, they're doing daily polls. He has to get up because he wants to get elected again. He wants us, the people, to give him power for another 4 years, and so he has to look to see how he's doing, what he should change. That is not, in a primary sense, the exercise of power. The exercise of power, there's still areas in the world, since all time zones still exist, there are people right now, there's no scarcity of them, by all reports, of real dictators, real tyrants, one-man regimes with them and their cronies and their family, right now, in the world. And I don't hear any of us suggesting we all go move there, but note, if you can get past all of the local concerns that your nervous system would express, there is a different, totally different exercise. There is a whole, I guess in the city they would call it aura or charisma. The dance is different between people who took power. Forget being called madmen, etc. People who are wired up that they want power when the circumstances are right, which in the primary past it was, and even today it still is, some parts of this planet, and in the animal plant kingdom, it's still, they do not vote. They do not hold elections. those who are wired up to want power take power, or they get killed. Or somebody wants it worse, they take it. Now, could you forget all about shadows, forget all about apparent politics out here? Could you see that there is a quite beneficial, pragmatic use? Because what I just told you is a fact. It's disagreeable to ordinary intelligence nowadays. But then, how much of this is not? It's either disagreeable or silly, or abstruse to the point that makes me even want to look up the word. All right. Forget all about politics and consider internally trying to run a revolution, even though we use it symbolically here, but trying to run a revolution inside of your own neural system, inside of your own thinking. This revolution will not come about, will never come about. The proper power will never get empowered through anything resembling free elections. The old knowledge that makes up what you're pleased to call your thinking, your present intellectual sight and patterns, the old thinking is not any more than would happen out here. They are not at any time ever going to vote themselves out of office. Tyrants do not give up. That is, those who really want power, those who are wired up to want power, and they took it. Do you not see? And forget ideas that, well, the guy was deranged. It was just his hobby. He was just wired up to do it. You are simply wired up to be what you appear to be at the old building site, in the area of old neural politics in you. That which seems to be you, that which seems to be the cornerstone, that seems to be the fount of wisdom, of power, of bureaucratic decisions that's in you, where the hell did it come from? Now that we've laughed at psychiatrists, and you won't fool with going back and try to get somebody to tell you, the history is in you. Where did it come from? You don't the hell know. That's where it came from. How did that man ever get in power over there? He's an idiot. He's a maniac. Well, at least, says other parts of life's body, at least some of us will be able to come up with some new phony baloney jobs, because we can be writing and speculating about this for another 100 years. But the answer is, how in the world did those people let that guy take charge? Or how did a guy that's so crazy take charge? Or why are things still arranged that way? The answer is, you don't the hell know. Why are you like you are? Did I ever tell you how my mother left? Hey, don't give me that crap. All right, did I tell you how bad my father drank? Would you shut the hell up? I'm doing it for you. How did they let this man take charge? Let's deal with some plain speak, if you could, based on plain thought. I do not know. Why are you like you are? I do not know. Ah, come on. I bet the people, I bet it was because their economic conditions is why they let this happen. That's known as a plain look. And you look at the person and they go, you're right, I just said that. All right, then I ask you, if I was playing the part, and I ask you, how did you get like you are? That which is in control in you. You call yourself a free thinker. You believe that you're sophisticated, well-read, educated, lots of knowledge and facts. And I say, well, and you do have a personality. I know you when I see you. And if I have any doubt, all I got to do is just go, do you under the chin? And you'll say, oh, you don't know what kind of guy I am. Okay. Oh, all right, I will. But if I somewhere along the line stopped you and I said, all right, how did you get to be that kind of guy? You go, well, all right. Well, first, I guess I'm going to have to tell you where I was born. No, you don't. No, believe me. Oh, no. It's I know you've probably heard some strange stories, but let me tell you, you ever heard of Saskatchewan? Hey, don't give me this crap. Or if I didn't do that, if I went back and did this and gave you a plain look and you were playing your part correctly, you'd go, oh, all right. You remember the question was, I was saying, all right, how did you get to be this kind of guy? And you started telling me your stories about drinking in Saskatchewan, and I go, you say, oh, okay. I don't know. Are you happy? That which is in power in you here is there because it was supposed to be there. When you look around at the tyrants, no matter who they are, those that are in power right now in history, but right now, contemporary, those who are in power are supposed to be in power. When their time runs out, they'll go join that big banquet with I always want to call him Caluso, the guy from Romania. His accent was not as good as Peter Sellers, but you will go and you will go to live with Juan Perón, with Papa Joe Stalin. But as long as they're there, no matter what you say, you got some local concern maybe that well, I don't like that. That's bad news. I'm sorry to see that happen to those fine people over in Transylvania. Whoever's in power was wired up to be in power in that dance out there. And it's only ordinary people that would see any difference between that and their own local concerns, their own what they call knowledge about that. Now, so how'd you get that knowledge? Well, I read, I study, I consider this. In fact, I majored in political history, political science. Did you now? Why did you decide to do that? Tell me what kind of guy you are. Well, all right. Well, first off, I think you should know this. I know it's pretty strange to actually be from any of the Western territories of Canada and to go into political. No. And I give you the plain look and you go, oh, I don't know. You got me. But they don't see. They don't know any more and they would not see the connection if somebody could plain think. And you said, all right, you must know what kind of guy you are. You won't hesitate to tell me, yeah, I can. All right, how'd you get to be that kind of guy? And suddenly I could do some kind of trick and make them plain think. They go, I do not the hell know. Oh, come on, you must know a little bit. Something about your past? Nope. Something about your parents? Nope. Where you were born? Nope. Your religion? Nope. Your race? Nope. I don't know. Whew. But they would not see the connection between that, which is the sight, where they, as they call it, think, between that, and then asking out here, well, why are things in the condition they're in? Okay, I'll tell you. And what they're going to do is tell you the kind of guy life is, the kind of guy the people in Transylvania are, the kind of guys that politicians are, the kind of guys that everybody else is but me. But if I could do the trick again and say, wait a minute, really? I mean, you know that. You've read it. You know that. You'd go, suddenly I've got you back to plain thought again. You'd go, don't know. Ah, come on now. You've read enough. You went to college. You know something about the background of how that one area was overrun by this group, and then they changed hands several times, and they were persecuted. I mean, it's understandable they didn't end up with this kind of right-wing dictator or left-wing. And if you were still engaged in plain thought, you go, nope. You mean you got no idea what? Nope, none. None whatsoever. Oh. There is no way that you can leave it to any aspect of old knowledge, old intelligence, that in any way is going to engage in, be a participant in, to any degree, a revolution, because it is just as real on the energy level internally as it is out here. Tyrants do not resign from office. They certainly do not offer free elections. If there's any chance they're going to get voted out of office, which there's always a chance, and therefore they don't hold them. It is not going to happen, never happened. If it happened in some way, it is simply that the man's time was up. Those that are wired up in life's body for life's purposes, not for some political purpose, not for some group's purpose somewhere. People are wired up, as they would call it, to want power. And they take it. They take it in every area except the secondary world. Now they do it, but we run out of time to get you to symbolically see it. It is now. The further you get removed from our primary past, let's use the United States, where we are, as and still a fair representation of the avant-garde, the up-to-date statement of the secondary world. We are, as much as anybody in the world, free. The elections, the government, we select down at the local level. I mean, there's been enough Supreme Court work done on one man, one vote, that everybody's vote counts. At least you can go vote, and there are no exceptions. Some little local community somewhere down in Arkansas or Nebraska cannot decide, well, I know that we have to let everybody vote here in the national elections or maybe the state elections, but here in this city, we're not going to let anybody vote that's not kin to me, said the mayor. No. So everybody here has got to vote. the power in the secondary world begins to be further and further removed from the primary past, wherein it was grasped by wolves, by men, on the basis that it should be an immediate exercise to make some other group dance backwards. Now how life is moving, as reflected in politics. Think about the crude shadows that life is doing, is making, as you see the whole world in our lifetime, the last 10 or 11 months. Just all over the world, democracy is breaking out. The exercise of power that's needed in here, though, it's not a revision, it's not a reverting to the past, wherein, as I was pointing out, that the Attilas in some parts of the planet right now is still true because of the time zone. It was proper for those that wanted power to simply take power. It was the most efficient. The closer you are to primary concerns, if we were now on a desert island, if it did have the great wars and we were in a nuclear winter again, you would not have elections. Even people in America, even people in Western Europe, and there's only a handful of us left, or a large part of the population of the world's gone, nobody's going to worry about elections. They want somebody to take the hell in charge. You don't even care who, just somebody gets them. All right, all of you people go over here and you start digging holes, and the rest of you over here, you start filling them up. And I'm going to find out, I'm going to see what's going on around here. Like half the planet's gone. He go, hey, you trust, I'm going to look into this, but the rest of you stay busy. And the rest of them, people go, boy, at least somebody take charge. Up here, you cannot do that in a revolutionist sense. Up here, it is more and more, as the expansion of the secondary world is what is comparable to free elections. It is the orderly, stable expansion of ideas on what seems to be an equitable basis. That it's fair. It's sometimes known as reason, logic. It is thing-oriented thinking. It's the same thing as, well, I want to vote, and you vote, and they count your vote, and it makes sense. 1 and 1 equals 2. My vote was counted, and they put it up on the board. The revolution, although I use the term symbolically, the revolution up here, you can't go by that. Your knowledge, no matter what you think about it right now, no matter what it may tell you, it is not going to vote itself out of office. And if you want to think new, I'm going to have to tell you. Well, let me just quote back to the story. If you're trying to find a new way, or as I've been calling it, even to learn how to think in a new way, you're seeking to establish a new site of power, a new form of internal power. If you want it, you got to take it.